Hello, Meachum Village. So welcome back. Welcome to 2025. This is one of our first videos in a long time because all of us had a major life changes over the last few months. So thank you for those who have still watched the videos, still maintained your subscription to the channel. We are committed to being more consistent this year. And I want to kick off with a video style that I haven't done before, but we'll see how it goes. It's a reaction video. And I want to react to a podcast episode that Umar Johnson did a few weeks ago that seems to still be trending and still getting a lot of people talking. And I just want to give a biblical perspective to it for young women and for those of us who are mothers and aunts and we are advising young women on dating and marriage. Umar Johnson said some things that sound good on the surface, but when you put them under the microscope of Scripture, it falls apart pretty quickly. So let's get into the first clip of him talking about financial expectations in relationships.
Number one, black women cannot, shall not, should not expect a black man to be able to provide them with the same type of a lifestyle that a Caucasian can provide for the white female, because the Caucasian benefits from white privilege. The black man suffers from white racism. So we should not be, no sister should be looking for a European equivalent or an African equivalent of a European. A black man has to work twice as hard to get half as much. So although I can appreciate the financial equity, but if you are a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer as an African woman in Australia or America or the UK or Toronto or Johannesburg, looking for a black man who has financial equity with your type of career success, that's going to be difficult. You might got to tone it down a little bit. What I find as a therapist who works with couples, married, divorced, and otherwise, too often black women prioritize a man's income over his masculinity, meaning he can provide. He's willing to help with those children. He will nurture you, look out for you, but he might not be able to put you in a Mercedes. He might not be able to help you with that $1 million mortgage. And I've seen black women turn down good men, very good men, because he didn't have the economics, but he had everything else. Sisters need to be careful not to fall into this European narrative of judging men primarily by how much they make.
Whew, okay. So let's pick this apart. Number one, it's not a European narrative that men should provide. It's a biblical narrative. It's a biblical commandment, right? This is 1 Timothy 5:9. This is Yahweh laying out the standards and expectations in the Old Testament. He lays out roles that place men as the protectors of their families and providers of their families. This is not something that white people came up with. This is something that Yahweh came up with. And I refuse to believe that Yahweh didn't foresee racial oppression. He didn't foresee that there would be this group of Americans who would be under racial oppression or under white privilege and say, oh, except y'all can do something different. Y'all can have women provide for y'all because what you're going through is so bad. Even under the oppression of Rome, the men were expected to provide for their families. Even under the oppression of Babylon and Assyria and all the different colonizers that the Hebrews had, Yahweh's standard did not change. Men are to be the providers of the family, and we should not, and we have done a horrible job of this, but we shouldn't be changing Yahweh's standard because of social pressures or because of, social oppression. That's number one. If you're about your Father's business and you're praying and you're fasting about the moves you should be making in life, white privilege is not going to be anything more than a barrier you have to overcome. It's not going to stop you. It's not going to shut you down. It's not going to relegate you to poverty. If you are about your Father's business and you are praying and you are following his plan and you have a community of believers around you who you can go to for help and guidance, white privilege is not going to stop you. That's number one. Number two, let's not take dating and marriage advice from a man who has turned several women into single mothers. Let me say that again. Let's not take dating and marriage advice from a man who has turned several women, more than one woman for sure, into a single mother and is still to this day not married. And my understanding is that he did a recent podcast with Nick Cannon where he's talking about how he's, even though he has these 2 baby mamas that want to marry him, he's looking for 2 different women to be his wife because his movement is so big that he needs 2 women. Like he's Abraham or something. This is not a credible source of advice. He gets a lot of attention. He has a large platform, but if you are a follower of Christ, he is not qualified to counsel you. Marriage and family are one of those areas where lived experience makes you the expert. Success makes you the expert, not credentials. I also want to respond to this notion he puts out there that, black women are looking for these excessive material provisions and should lower their standards if they want a black man, right? I don't know where this comes from, but black women have always been the financial backbones of their households. There has literally never been an era in our history since emancipation where black women had the luxury of focusing on our homes, focusing on our families while the men provided, and then all of a sudden we got greedy. Like that never happened. So I'm not sure where this is coming from, but the data just doesn't back it up. Here is a study from Pew Research Institute, published recently in April of 2023, and it talks about black wives, especially those who are college graduates, they are more likely than women of other groups to be in egalitarian marriages or be the breadwinner in their marriage, right? They compared black women to white women, Hispanic women, and Asian women. A higher percentage of black women are in egalitarian marriages where they're contributing as much as their husbands financially, and a higher percentage of black women are the breadwinners or sole providers in their marriage than women of other groups. So I'm not sure where this narrative is coming from that black women just want to be provided for. If anything, we want to step out of this role and be able to focus on our children and be able to focus on our homes. If anything, we want to stop being the financial soldiers because that's not our role. That's not our biblical role. So I don't know where he's getting this from, that black women need to relax their standards and work with black men. We do. We have, literally historically. Here's a commentary that I love by Carter G. Woodson. He wrote this for his Journal of Negro History back in July 1930. In the North, during these antebellum times, the Negro washerwoman had to bear still heavier burdens. In the South, her efforts were largely supplementary, but in the North, she was often the sole wage earner of the family, even when she had an able-bodied husband. The trouble was not due to his laziness, but to the fact that Negro men in the North were often forced to a life of idleness. Travelers of a century ago, in 1830, often saw these black men sitting around loafing and noted as an evidence of the shiftlessness of the Negro race. But they did not see the Negro washerwoman toiling in the homes and did not take time to find out why these Negro men were not gainfully employed. Negro men who had followed trades in the South were barred therefrom by trades in the North. And the more enlightened and efficiently trained Irish and Germans immigrating to the United States drove them out of menial positions. Carter G. Woodson is explaining that we've always been willing to not only chip in and help, but chip in and be the foundation financially for our households. So stop it. Let's look at another clip now of him painting a scenario of a situation where he thinks a woman should be providing for a grown man.
You have a problem if you met a man who made half of what you made or a third of what you made, but he had a financial vision of an empire, a business, some sort of an entrepreneurial undertaking.
See, I think that's dangerous.
Stay with me.
I think that's dangerous.
Let me finish it, and then I want you to respond. And he needed you to help invest in his dream. And he gave you a definitive timeline. He said, give me 12 months or 24, no more than that. If you invest in me, I promise you what I'm going to build will equal where you are. Would you have a problem investing in him?
What does investing in him mean?
Let's say he needed $700 a month to help fuel this dream. He needed $700 for 24 months. Could you do it? You're reluctant.
I am reluctant because what's the guarantee?
There is no guarantees in love. There is no guarantees in romance.
And
If
also,
you need a guarantee,
I think context matters. How long have
agree.
we been together?
I agree.
You know, if it's just a guy that I met last year and all of a sudden he has these dreams and he
y'all
wants
been
me to
dating
fund
for
it.
about 2 years. You like him. There might even be some love there. and he's saying
there might be
invest
some
in
love
me.
there is crazy. There has to be some love there.
Let's say there
has
is.
to be a future there. And I think that's what I'm saying. Context matters. If I see myself with
But
this
you didn't
man,
answer the question. Let's say
Yeah.
all those things are there. Will you financially invest in him?
So there are several issues with this scenario, and I'm going to pick this apart from a biblical perspective. Number one, ladies, we do not yoke ourselves to boyfriends. We do not financially yoke ourselves to boyfriends. We do not emotionally yoke ourselves to boyfriends. We don't have babies with boyfriends. We don't move in with boyfriends. We don't start businesses with boyfriends. We don't loan money to boyfriends. We don't take money from boyfriends. A boyfriend is not a biblically viable relationship status. Yahweh only respects single, betrothed or engaged, and married. Those are the only times, if you're engaged and married, that you should be creating binding ties with another man. But we don't yoke ourselves to boyfriends. We don't financially do anything with a boyfriend. And again, like I said, that goes both ways. You shouldn't be financially expecting anything from a boyfriend. He's not your husband. He's not obligated to provide for you. Again, we're confusing roles, but a biblical perspective is, if he's not your husband, we don't create the tie. He then goes on to say, when she says, what guarantees do I have? He said, there's no guarantees in romance. We're not having a conversation about romance. This is a business investment. So the conversation should be about the transaction, right? If he's genuinely looking for investors to help him with his business, the conversation with his girlfriend should go the way it would with any other investor. That means girlfriend should be asking about a term sheet. What kind of equity stake do I get? Does my equity stake dilute down if other investors come in board? Show me your projected balance sheet. Show me your projected profit and loss statement. Show me your projected cash flow statement. What is your business model? What mentors or thought leaders are guiding your process during this business? She should be asking and putting up the same level of scrutiny that any other investor would. And her financial investment should come with some kind of equity stake or some kind of financial return. Even if it's not a guarantee, there's expectations, right? There's some sort of, some sort of encouragement or something he should get that, yes, I know I can do this. So we're not having a conversation about romance. This is not a conversation about love. This is a conversation about a business transaction, and we're going to treat it accordingly. If this is a real situation and your boyfriend or your daughter's boyfriend or your niece's boyfriend or whoever is putting her in this type of situation where he's asking her for money, on the fingers crossed strategy that maybe he'll marry her even though it's not guaranteed, this is borderline predatory. If he's not willing to answer the questions and stand up to the scrutiny of a typical investment conversation, then he's basically banking on her emotional attachment for her to have blind faith in him and write a blank check. And that is predatory. He's exploiting her emotions. So be smart about this. When it comes to love and relationships, when you start to get money and finances involved, your emotions need to be shut off. And you need to approach this with a spreadsheet. All right, so let's keep going. The other reason why this scenario is a firm no is because there is no precedent in Scripture for a woman to be providing for a man, not even her husband. This is a setup that we came up with in response to some of the things that Carter G. Woodson talking about, Black men being barred from certain industries. This is a scenario that we came up with, bowing down to the axioms of feminism that want women to be men, provide like men, work like men, lead households like men, be interchangeable with men. But this is not how Yahweh set it up. So if this is a situation, right, where boyfriend is asking girlfriend for money to get his business off the ground, girlfriend needs to direct him to another man. There should be an elder, a professor, a pastor, an uncle, a father, somebody who she can say, why don't you talk to my uncle so-and-so? He's a successful business owner. Maybe he can be your investor. But this is not your job as a woman to financially support a man. Scripture outlines this very clearly in the book of Ruth. We have Boaz, who is the kinsman redeemer of his family. His job is to be the one his family members go to when they're broke. He's the one that the family members go to when they get in a bind or when they need money. And this is a biblical position laid out in Leviticus 25, that there should be a male elder that people can go to. It is never a woman. So again, trying to reverse the roles is how we got in this situation in the first place. And then he goes on to say, you know, if you provide for me, then I'll be able to provide for you. That's not how this goes, right? The question is, he talks about white supremacy and white privilege. Let's interchange those words with solidarity. White solidarity is what conquers other nations. White solidarity is what conquers other groups and other industries. They know how to come together like fingers of a fist. We don't have that. It's not that we're suffering from it. It's that we haven't gotten ourselves together enough to be unified. We haven't gotten ourselves together enough to take over industries where we can pipeline our young men into being entrepreneurs or to having gainful employment. We keep expecting them to do it and then complaining about it. Okay, so the other reason why this is a firm no is because in Dr. Umar's scenario, this young man has already failed. He's already failed. His business has already failed. The mindset behind this scenario is not the type of mindset that a successful entrepreneur has, right? And I say this as a 40-something-year-old woman who bootstrapped a business with not a dime of debt, bootstrapped it to 7 figures and sold it. Not a huge acquisition, but it was enough that I don't have to work right now. And I don't ever plan to go back to work. The mindset of a true entrepreneur is totally different than what Umar Johnson is describing. And that already tells me that this young man has failed already. Number one, if you are truly an entrepreneur at heart, you truly have an entrepreneurial spirit, you make sacrifices. You do not look for handouts. He came up with a pathetic sum, $700 a month. If you are an entrepreneur and you can't come up with $700 a month, how on earth are you going to make payroll? How on earth are you going to pay all these taxes? How on earth are you going to financially manage a business if you can't come up with $700 a month? One of the key signature traits of an entrepreneur is being able to come up with money. If you can't do that, then this is not for you. You need to go fill out an application. A true entrepreneur is going to make sacrifices. They're delivering Instacart on the weekends. They're driving Uber at night. They're moving out of their apartment, you know, in the skyscraper building and moving into a family member's basement. They are sleeping on somebody's couch. They are on a rice and beans lifestyle to have the money they need for their business. They're not going to somebody looking for a handout. That's a dead last resort for most entrepreneurs. And even then, like the torment of owing somebody is enough to make you not even want to do it. You'll make the sacrifice. I'd rather go get a second job. I'd rather not sleep. I'd rather sleep 3 hours a night and work the rest of the day to get the money I need than take a handout. So again, the mindset says he's already failed. The other reason he's already failed is because of decision making, right? First of all, it is not common for Christ-following men, which are the only ones we should be thinking about marrying. It is not common for Christ-following men to need 2 to 3 years to be sure that they want to marry you. Christ-following men know very quickly, literally 90 days or less, if the woman they're with has the potential to be his wife. He knows in a very short time if he wants to move towards marriage or if this is not the one. Not only is that a characteristic of Christ-following men, it also is a characteristic of true entrepreneurs. True entrepreneurs are very comfortable making tough decisions. True entrepreneurs are very comfortable firing people that ain't working out. You do not sit on the fence for any major area of your life if you're truly, truly an entrepreneur and if you're truly, truly a Christ follower. So this young man, this scenario that he painted, there's a million reasons to say no. There's a million reasons that every young woman should feel comfortable saying no. But the first reason you should say no is because you're 2 to 3 years into this relationship and he can't even guarantee that he loves you. You're 2 to 3 years into this relationship and he can't even guarantee that he sees a future with you, but he wants your money. Like, stop it. So share this with young girls so we can start having a biblical perspective about some of these scenarios, because again, these Umar Johnson types, they have this charade of like false righteousness. But when you put it under the microscope that Yahweh has given us, it falls apart. And I want us to be smarter about these decisions. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope this gave you something to think about. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, as we'll be pumping out more content this year. Leave a comment below if you have questions, if you have objections, if you have corrections, if you have compliments. We'll take it all. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.